Hello there and welcome to Prog Chattery 777. We are talking about Jethro Tull and we've made it to their third album, Benefits. It is an early album by Jethro Tull. I don't think it's necessarily definitive and I don't think it's necessarily a classic album, but it's a nice little statement from that early period. We've got a sustained lineup. The lineup is the same as the previous album, Stand Up. We've got Ian Anderson, Martin Barr, Glenn Cornick, and Clive Bunker. God, my my brain is a mush. And yeah, it's like I said, it's not necessarily definitive, but it's an interesting little piece of history. Like I mentioned before, in the stand-up video, these early albums are great because we really get to see Anderson's evolution as a songwriter, and we see him grow as a songwriter. We see him refine his craft, and even though he hasn't mastered it yet, and you know, it's almost as if he never really mastered it because he's always evolving and he's always changing the way he presents his lyrics and how he presents the songs. But this is still a searching album. I don't think it's quite as adventurous as Stand Up. I mean, like Stand Up is just this wonderful frenzy of, you know, every song is a little adventure that's totally fresh and new. This album, I think, is a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more straight ahead. Some would say that it's probably more focused, which might be true. It's also pretty moody, actually. There's a light-hearted fun about Stand Up, whereas this is a little bit more gloomy. At this point in their career, I mean, they've been touring hard. I mean, they were touring the States. I think they toured with Led Zeppelin, and you know, bands were just worked so hard back in those days, and so I think they were in a grumpy mood, or at least Ian Anderson was in a grumpy mood, and that kind of reflects with some of the lyrics on this album. So yeah, side one opens with You There to Help Me. I really like this song. And it's a good example of what they were going for with blending the acoustic folk influence with the heavy rock kind of a thing. And we get, With You There to Help Me is a really good example of that. It's kind of a slow way to start the album, and the verses are very kind of ballady, but it does pick up. It has its dynamic sections. Like I said, it's about balancing the acoustic flavors with the heavy electric flavors. And I think it does a really good job of that. There's some kind of weird flute effects. I think they're flute effects. Or the intro with the but that's kind of typical of his flute playing style at the time. He was quite unique and eccentric with it. So yeah, it opens with a great song. Then we get Nothing to Say. It's okay. We see perhaps a sophistication in the arrangements. You know, there's more changes and it's a little bit more arranged, I guess. We get some great guitar playing by Martin Barr, obviously. Again, quite moody. I mean, the verses are very, very moody. And the chorus kind of has this little ascending kind of or not the chorus. It's moody, but it's not gloomy, I guess. But it's not a standout track. Track 3, side 1 is Inside. This one I really like. It's got a nice fast-paced little jazzy number, some fast-paced bass anyway. I love the little flute line. Great vocal performance by Anderson. He was really starting to find his voice on here, and those quirky vocal embellishments that he would throw in are on fine form at this stage. I mean, again, he's young and full of energy, and I'm sure his ego is just blasting away as one's is at this stage in a music career. But yeah, it's really good. Inside is quite a nice little song. Not necessarily proggy at all, but you know, like I said, they don't necessarily fit too comfortably with those other bands. We move on to Sun. This is a pretty good song. Again, we get that contrast between the real heavy and the acoustic flavors. They probably could have done a bit of a better arrangement. Like the first rocky bit chugs along quite nicely, and then it just fades, and then the acoustic part kind of fades in. And the contrast is nice, but I think they probably could have arranged that a little bit more smoothly. From going from the acoustic section back into the rocky section is much smoother, and like the melody kind of makes sense as it winds its way back into the reprise of the heavy bit. There's nothing necessarily definitive about it, but it's a good song from this album, good song of the period. Side one closes with For Michael Collins, Jeffrey, and Me. Jeffrey makes another appearance, his third song. It's a good song. I used to really like it when I was a little younger. Again, it's pretty moody. It's got some nice acoustic flavorings to it. Michael Collins, of course, was one of the astronauts on one of the moon landings, who was the only one that had to stay behind and not walk on the moon. And of course, Jeffrey, he turns out to be Jeffrey Hammond, who would join after this album. He would join on the next album. But originally, he was a part of Ian Anderson's original Blackpool band. I think he may have played with them, or he may have just been a close friend of the band. But I think he had the opportunity to be in Jethro Tull, and he didn't, and he ended up getting left behind. And then Me is Ian Anderson referencing himself. I'm not sure what he got left behind from, but yeah, it's an okay song. Again, a little moody, but it's okay. We flip to side two, and side two opens with To Cry You a Song. I really like this one. There's no flute on this one. That's a notable fact. But I think it is a classic song. Great display of Martin Barre and his tremendous riffery. Quite heavy. Arguably the heaviest thing Tull had done up to this point. And that could have been the influence of touring with Led Zeppelin and hearing what they were doing with their sensational heavy sound. So obviously that was influential. And yeah, there's some great tempo changes, and again, you can see that they're getting into that. They're getting into arranging things, and like I said, the changes in that. Blah 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 blah. Track 2 is A Time for Everything. I really like this song as well. It's got an old school '60s kind of flavor to it. Yeah, it's quite nice. I particularly like the flute melody that comes after the chorus. That do 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 ba da 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 ba ba da 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 ba da 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 da. So 60s. It feels so 60s. Summer of Love and all that. Although I feel Anderson was not necessarily for all that stuff. In interviews, he tends to rally. I wasn't a hippie. But yeah, I quite like it. Again, there isn't necessarily anything definitive on this album, I don't think. To Cry You a Song is a classic, but this is still a searching album. So it's good, but not the best. Teacher probably comes close to being definitive. It's never been one of my favorite songs by Tull, but I feel Teacher's the famous one off the album. I really like the ch-ch-chs that he puts into it. It's a Jethro Tull rock song from 1970. There's nothing particularly special about it for me personally, but I think it's a nice early song, an example of Ian Anderson's early songwriting. So it's good. Then we get Play in Time. This is a really cool song. This one always stood out to me. We get the kind of fast hard rock blues shuffle. And it's got a really cool flute line now when it gets to the chorus with do 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 do. That's really cool. It's a nice kind of awkward juxtaposition to the shuffle of the main bit of the song. So again, it shows their newfound interest in arranging things. And I mean, how much of that was Ian Anderson dictating this is what the song goes like, or if the band did have a little more influence. But I mean, of course, Anderson did eventually, really become the leader of Tull. But the particular arrangements, I mean, it's hard to say. You know, I'm sure they jammed it out and figured things out on their own as well. But I really like Playing Time. Bluesy, but it's not like the blues that's on Stand Up. It's a lot heavier, a lot rockier. And side two of the album finishes with "Sossity, You're a Woman." This might be my personal favorite on the album. I think it's really good. Um, this is very subdued. This is it doesn't really have the contrast between acoustic and heavy. It's just Ian Anderson at the guitar. Um, there's some nice organ lines courtesy of John Evan. I forgot to mention John Evan. Even though he's not joined the band officially yet, he did appear as a session musician on this album, and then later joined the band for the tour, and then after that was incorporated. So as such, this is the last album that's credited as a four-piece, even though technically John Evan is on it. So yeah, he contributes some really nice organ on "Sossity, You're a Woman," and then tambourine comes in. That's probably Clive Bunker. And this kind of became a signature thing on Tull albums, and a signature thing of Anderson's songwriting is having those little acoustic numbers, like solo kind of pieces. This is a lot longer than the kind of stuff he would do on Aqualung, for example, but it's a beautiful song, really. I think his voice is in full form. His voice sounds great, and we're really introduced to his like very accomplished acoustic guitar playing. He's so known for being the flute player, but I mean particularly pre 1990s when he got really good at the flute and he properly learned how to play it. He was such a phenomenal acoustic guitar player. I mean, I think in that earlier period he was a much better acoustic guitar player than he was a flautist. Although he was known for the flute and that was a big part of the stage act. I mean, his guitar playing is just brilliant, and it got better. But we're really introduced to his unique style, which includes a lot of finger picking techniques and a lot of fast playing. But it's still so musical. He's got such a great knack for it, and that's on great display on "Sossity, You're a Woman." So there it is. That's "Benefit" by Jethro Tull. Pretty good album, but not definitive. It's kind of lumped between "Stand Up," which I think is an early classic, and Aqualung, which obviously that's a classic. So, maybe it's overlooked, or maybe it's just that it's not as good as the other stuff. Definitely a good little piece of history, though. So, if you're interested in getting to know Jethro Tull, that it's not definitive, but it tells you how it shows you how they got to where they got. So, it's cool. That's it for Benefit. Hope you liked it. Stay tuned next time for the big one. We'll be talking about Aqualung. So, we'll see you then. Thanks.